Welcome to Beyond the Inbox, an e-commerce podcast brought to you by Drip. In each episode, you'll hear from top e-commerce marketers and founders who will reveal the customer-first strategies they're using to grow their sales, subscribers, and revenue. Now let's get into today's episode. In this episode of Beyond the Inbox, I'm joined by Sam Tichnor, founder of FFUPS. Sam shares his journey of building a unique snack brand that's all about fun and flavor. He also discusses his approach to marketing and product development, as well as the challenges and opportunities he's faced along the way. Join us as we dive into the world of snacks and learn what it takes to build a successful D2C brand. Sam, welcome to Beyond the Inbox. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Of course, great to be here.
Can you start by telling us a little bit about the origins of FFUPS and what inspired you to start the brand?
Yeah, of course. So origins of FFUPS came in like the depths of the pandemic, where I had been previously working on new brand incubation at a mid-sized CPG, was on a sabbatical because I'd spent 5 years there and earned my free month off, and was just strolling down the grocery aisle and kind of had two epiphanies. First being that every new brand was focused on some sort of health claims, but if you went down the mainstream aisle at conventional grocery stores, like you wouldn't see their products there. And based on how the other brands positioned, like you wouldn't see their products there because they would be placed in a different aisle where like healthy snacks are. And the second one was simply that in the puff snack space, in that mainstream aisle, even though every other type of snack category had a bunch of different flavor options, puffs were basically just cheese. So I started thinking there's definitely an opportunity to do something that isn't specifically health focused and do something where rather than be another Cheetos that, you know, switching out an ingredient to be like, oh, we're better Cheetos, even though they're really not. What if we actually do something that is better for a consumer, which is flavors that they typically wouldn't find on a puff? So that was like kind of like the key origin story of like how we got started. Spent a ton of time like validating that with consumers and working on branding and getting the product right. So there's like a lot that had to happen to go from like, oh, this is an interesting idea to actually like now we've got a brand and a product. But the key origin was just like the realization that there's a product that should exist but doesn't.
As someone who was tasked with coming up with new brands to incubate or potentially buy when you were working at Harry's, how did that experience prepare you for becoming an entrepreneur and starting FFUPS?
Yeah, I mean, it was incredibly helpful in the pre-launch phase for sure, because I had kind of been through it before. And I think more importantly, I had worked on a lot of concepts that didn't quite make it to launch because we had, number one, like our barriers were pretty high for like what would the company be willing to invest in. But then it also helped me flex that muscle of like, is this actually a good idea? Or are we just going through the motions of, oh, well, it's my job to, get this to launch. And so it kind of like, it helped me, number one, like understand like what are the steps that need to be taken to actually go from idea to product. And then where are all the checkpoints that we should have to make sure that like, do we actually want to do this? So it was almost like when I was, getting going and transitioning out of Harry's into working on this, I felt like I was like, oh, I'm just doing the same job, but I just don't make any money for it. And then I think secondly, just, working at a company like Harry's for as long as I did to see it both grow from where it was to where it got to, and then also understanding like, well, what did it take to really get going? It just helped me understand, like, here's all the things to learn about. Like, these are the things that you need to know. So, like, while I wasn't responsible for all the e-commerce things, I was more on the finance and ops side of things. I had exposure to it and knew the people who were working on it. And, through some of the work I was doing, understood, like, what are the drivers that make things work? And how should you think about growing the business?
So let's walk through some of those checkpoints. You're in the store, you have this epiphany. Can you walk us through your product development process from concept to validation to final product? What did that look like?
So there were kind of like two work streams I did side by side. First was just understanding, like, is there a commercial and consumer need for this product? So first thing I did was got my hands on as much industry data as I could. So understanding market size, growth rates, key competitors, what the margins look like, how hard is it to manufacture, all those like certain things. And what I love to look for is an industry where there's a ton of consolidation, because to me, that would mean not every consumer need is being met. And when I was looking at the puff space, what I found to be most compelling was like Cheetos basically owns the category. And then there is a long tail of competitors. There's probably like 15 to 20 better for you competitors that are specifically going after health claims, or there's some that go after like the kids market. So when I was looking at it, I was like, okay, so there's a big competitor. There are some brands going after some specific needs, but the thing that I'm actually interested in, no one's really touching. So like to me, I was like, great, like that's an unmet consumer need potentially. And then talk to a bunch of people, validate that like, yes, they want more flavors on puffs. So kind of, I guess it was like, just analyze the data, go talk to a bunch of people. And then I finished with like a quantitative survey where I used just like one of those like free survey things, got about 600 responses and felt pretty good about, not just my friends saying that they, felt that there was a need there. So then that kind of gave me the confidence to feel like, great, like I can come up with a concept and give this to a branding agency and feel good about, getting a brand on paper. At the same time, I needed to validate, like, can I make this product? Like conceptually, sure, people would buy it, but is there a thing that I can make? So what I did there was I worked with a firm on product development. And we kind of first, I wanted to understand the manufacturing landscape. Like, are there people who can make this product? I think in general, like, yes, it's an extruded puff. There are plenty of manufacturers out there. With the one watch out for me, which I have learned the hard way over time, is that the minimum order quantities are not low. So out the gate, I needed to be buying a ton of inventory. And so that, as a bootstrap brand, that made it a little bit like challenging, because it's like, great, one of the things I'm going to have to learn how to manage is a lot of my cash is going to be tied up in inventory. So that was like kind of one of those like yellow flags where I was like, okay, like that's going to probably hurt me down the road, but is that a reason not to do the brand? Like, I don't think so. Because also like once we hit a level of scale, which is we're getting to now, like it's actually incredibly cheap to make the product. And so we can either have incredibly high margins, we can lower our prices to consumers, or we can kind of do both. So then I felt good about the ability to make it, and then worked with this firm on just like, do the flavors that we want to make actually taste good on a puff? And that was like, that's the big, like if it didn't taste good, we wouldn't do it. And so luckily through a couple rounds of iterations, like we felt like, all right, like no surprises, like a sour cream and onion puff tastes good. A salt and vinegar puff tastes good. There's a couple other flavors we tried that also tasted good, but I was like, well, I can't do them all. And then there were actually a couple that we tried that we couldn't do. Like we wanted to do like a cookies and cream Oreo type of flavor early on, and we just couldn't. It just didn't hit right. And then similarly, our hot chocolate SKU that we have now was actually originally conceived as a s'mores SKU. And it just like, when we were going through the process, I was like, this tastes really good, but it doesn't taste like a s'more. So why don't we just like call it something else rather than like, continue to bash our heads against the wall trying to make it s'mores like. So I guess like once we kind of hit those two, and I guess like they weren't like fully parallel, but we got through the branding and kind of consumer commercial stuff probably within like 4 to 5 months. And then the product development took a couple more months after that.
When you go on the website, you're met with this headline that says, not healthy, just delicious premium corn puffs. I love that headline, and I love the copywriting for the website in general. Can you talk a little bit about the role copywriting plays in positioning the product?
Yeah, so I think it's like the thing that matters most to the brand. When we were going through our branding and like picking what direction do we want to go with, there was a ton of options. That I've worked with this agency called Day Job. They're incredible. They do a lot of great work. And they presented me that like 15 options of like different brand concepts as a start. And the one we chose, which is the one we have now, obviously, is very simple. Like there's not too many crazy design elements. And it's a way, like I love the simplicity that makes it stand out in like kind of a sea of like a lot of brands are saying so much on packaging, and like we're just like, hey, like we're tasty tubes that are not healthy, and here's a little out of the box flavor name. So for us, with the simplicity, our copy needs to be really, really good. So luckily, like they gave me like an initial copy bank to work with, and I've kind of just like tried to channel as much as like with myself as the first consumer of this, like what would I like in a brand, knowing that there are a bunch of other people that feel the same way. So yeah, copy's everything. And I think what's cool about our brand is like we can take risks with it because that's like the whole point. Like we literally say we're not healthy on the packaging. So like we have license to kind of within reason say a bunch of weird things that like kind of like premium corn puffs is not a natural thing that people would say. But when we put it with our brand, like it kind of makes sense.
So I want to talk about the website. In our pre-interview, you said, and I'm paraphrasing here, I'm not trying to optimize for conversions. I'm trying to optimize for memorability. Can you tell us how the website helps do that?
Yeah, I guess like number one, we have an incredibly user unfriendly experience where if you're just like sitting on the web page and doing nothing, a bunch of puffs will just pop up and eventually take over the screen. And it's just like one of those things where it's like, yeah, like that probably annoys people, but at the same time, like it kind of gets them back engaged. And so like that's like one thing we thought about. And then the second is like we're like honest with ourselves about who we are as a brand and long term where people are going to buy us. Like we're not meeting a specific health need that people are like researching online, then clicking a link and then buying it because they don't think that they can buy their thing in the store that's near them. We're going to be in every shelf in the country at some point in the next decade. And our strategy is like, we're a retail brand. People want to buy, one bag at a time, once every other week for the rest of their life. And so when I think about what role DTC plays, it really needs to be like a flagship store where like if someone wants to buy in bulk, like that's awesome. And they can get it at a much fairer price than they would on shelf. But then also like, how do we use the website as a way for people to just say like, oh, that brand has a really cool website. I remember clicking on it or seeing it, or a friend shared it with me. And then when they see us in store, they'll be like, oh, that was the brand with a really cool website. So that's kind of like how we think about it. And so like we obviously have some work to do. Like we kind of had the V1 go up when we launched last year. And I think we're going through an exercise now of like, how do we take that and knowing what the role is and where the brand is going, and how do we make the website even less salesy and more like, this is a cool brand, you should try us, we're fun.
You and I were speaking before, and I think there's something that I find fascinating about your journey. A lot of D2C brands, they start as D2C and then they want to move into retail. You've done the opposite, and I would love to hear your thoughts on, is that something that more brands could benefit from doing, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. What our approach was very much like, let's just like see where it takes us. And so like when we launched, it was just on our website because like that was the only option. And if I had more industry connections with grocery stores, I would have loved to have been in grocery stores. But at the same time, operationally, as like a one guy shop working out of my apartment, there the level of like what you need to really execute in a grocery store well, like I probably couldn't have done by myself, and it might not have been the best. And we've iterated on the product and a bunch of things to make things better over time. But I mean, I really think it's just like listen to the consumer and understand the market. I think for us to have tried to do a bunch of paid social ads to try to trick people into buying things from us on the internet, like that's actually just like not right for our product. And so I think pretty early on, like we had pretty good organic sales at launch. And then, we started talking with consumers about like, hey, you ordered once, why didn't you make a second order? And the answer was like, I just want to buy this in a store. Like, I don't want to spend $30, $35 on like cheese puffs. Like, I'll just buy it one at a time. But like, I really like them. They taste really good. But like, I don't need 6 bags of cheese puffs sitting in my small pantry. And so it's really just like it going in eyes wide. And like, that's kind of what we thought it was going to be like, but just like going in eyes wide open to say like, this is how people want to interact with the product. So don't force someone into an unnatural behavior. And so for us, we were able to, within like a month or so of launch, like we were in maybe like 30 to 50 stores, and we've kind of been slowly building on that. But yeah, and that's where we see like our best. And I think for folks launching, retail is really hard. Like to launch in a 100-door chain off the bat, like you need financial resources that most brands don't have, and like ours included. And what worked really well for us was some of these like quick commerce platforms, like a Dashmart or a GoPuff or a Getir, where it's retail relationships, but it's kind of like unlimited shelf space DTC. Like Amazon is another good hybrid, although like that's obviously a little bit harder. But yeah, so like that's like I think just like we are going retail because that's where the consumer wants us to be, and I think there's a lot of other brands that are probably in the same boat.
How do you strike that balance between, with so many e-commerce brands driving repeat sales through email marketing and automations, how do you strike that balance between these people that are saying, hey, I just wanted to buy one bag, and wanting to turn them into lifelong customers? How do you strike that balance?
Yeah, it's hard. I think our approach to it is let's just treat it as brand exposure and brand building. And so it's, of course, we'll do like a sale email every once in a while, but I think for the most part, it's how do we like educate people on the brand, and how do we get people excited about it in a way where like we get a response from someone where it's like that email was really funny versus like, and I'd rather get that than, a couple sales, because like, it's, I mean, maybe not, I prefer the sales, but I think it's just the reactions of like, how do you integrate that? Like when we talked about like the website and what role does that play? Well, I think email is an extension of that, where it's just giving somebody an experience with the brand that just reminds them that we exist, so that in 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years, when they see us on shelf, they'll just remember like, oh, I had a very positive interaction with that brand, and I think they're really funny, and they get me. And that's kind of what we're going for. So it's like a slow play, but I think it's, if we can just like consistently, do things like, explain to them, why do we have a flavor that's called semi-historic sour cream and onion? Like, why do we call our puffs tasty tubes? Like, just continually just like doing those over time versus a like act now, or like this sale goes away tomorrow, or like, some of the hacky things, like, yeah, we can try, and I'm sure we will over time. But I think at least as we're building out the brand and really meeting our earliest consumers, like we kind of want to be opposite of that.
So you're not using any welcome flows or post-purchase flows or anything
Oh,
like that?
we do like the welcome and the post-purchase for sure. But like, I think in the post-purchase, like a lot of what I want to do is like, can we get a review? Can we get feedback? Because the thing that's hard for us, and we're still learning, is like, again, like with the insight that we got was actually from a post-purchase flow around, people prefer to buy in store and not spend $35 on cheese puffs, which like I probably wouldn't either. So yeah, like using that for consumer insights just as much as it would be like trying to get repeat sales. And like welcome flow, like it's for me, it's about brand education. So how do we have that if someone signs up for the email newsletter from a pop-up or just coming to the site, just like what are they signing up for, and getting to know the brand versus doing something that's more like, thanks for signing up, here's $5 off. Then like, psst, like you didn't use your $5 off code. Like those types of things are like probably less for us. But again, like it's just about the consumer. Like there's, like I was buying socks online a couple weeks ago, and that's a situation where just like I don't really care about the brand. I just need socks, but I like abandoned cart because I forgot I was doing something else. So then it's like, oh, cool. Now like I'm doing the thing that I want, and I'm getting it for cheaper. Like it's a little bit more transactional. And for us, like I just view it as like probably less of a transactional process.
I want to ask you about successful marketing campaigns or strategies. What worked at the start, and what is working right now for you?
Yeah. So at the start, I think we just made a bet that people will discover our brand and they'll think it's cool. And that like worked to an extent where, we definitely got a lot of like, friends and family, people like that buying, friends of friends, like third level people who like heard of somebody posting it online and they were like, oh, this is cool, I'll try it out. So that was like, obviously like word of mouth, incredibly helpful early on, getting featured in publications like the Snack Shot. They've been incredibly helpful for us. Just like kind of, being one of those brands that like, hey, they're doing something different. It's not like just another bland, like FFUPS is cool. And that was like a really nice validation for us. And we've tried like everything within budget to like see like what could stick. So we've tried doing paid social ads. We've done podcast stuff. We've done out of home stuff. And I think really what works is just like giving people product to try, which is like luckily fairly cost effective as well. And that's kind of where we settled into, at least like with a limited budget for now. Like it's really just like every once in a while on Instagram doing things like first 10 people to DM us, we'll send a free bag to. Because like for me, it's like now I can have 10 people try my product. A couple of them will come back and place an order. A couple of them will find it in a store near them at some point. And so like no one's been like, like I didn't like it. Because again, like it's junk food, like it tastes good. So I think like that's been for sure the most effective. We started doing that a lot more in like, probably like August of last year, and just been a consistent thing for us. I think what hasn't worked is like trying to do influencer stuff. I think snacks are such a personal thing to people that like, yeah, like there's the opportunity to maybe like go viral on TikTok as like a TikTok snack, but like you can't build a business model off of that. And so like maybe that'll come one day, but like I'm not like planning on it. But I think what's interesting is like snacks are such a personal thing that it really comes back to like, I don't really care that somebody else likes a certain snack, but if I try it and I like it, then I really do care. So that's kind of how we've thought about it. And I think going forward, what we want to do is start doing more like maybe a flavor collab and using kind of like our whole flavor positioning as a way to do something a little bit bigger and kind of, get a couple new things out there, but do it in a way where like there's some distribution from another party that can help us out.
I wonder if influencer marketing hasn't worked as well because so many influencers typically promote products that are, quote, healthy. And this product really is in a category of its own. And I'm wondering if, like you say, snacks are so personal, you almost don't want to share that snack with other people. And I wonder if that's part of the reason why.
Yeah, I think it worked like so organic. So there's like kind of like the nuance that like organic social has actually worked fairly well for us. And I think it has to be organic. It has to be like, people talk about UGC, but like UGC is not actually UGC. Like that's like kind of just like a misnomer. Like we need like actual UGC, like people who we don't know who are just posting stuff because they think it's cool. And that's where we've seen the most success, where like someone's like, oh, like a close friend of mine brought this to a party and I tried it and I liked it. So I went and bought it at a store, and that's happened. And so like, that's kind of like what we need is just really the organic side of things. And that it's a slow build, but over time, as we get more distribution and as we can just like build awareness. And that's again, going back to like, what role does the website play? What role does email play? What role would paid social play? Like, are we optimizing for making the sale today? Or do we just want someone to know that we exist? So that like, yeah, that's kind of how I think about it.
You mentioned it's just yourself right now. I'm curious, do you plan on expanding the team?
Yeah, so we're, hopefully by the time this is out, we will have completed a small fundraise, and we've got, a couple, not full-time, but just some like consultants and a couple agencies that, I've been in contact with that I think we'll, bring on and bring aboard. And I think what that'll let me do is like really focus on building out sales and just what are the things that I can take off my plate so that I can focus on building distribution and just making sure that we're in more people's hands quicker. I think with like our website as an example, like our conversion rate, like even though we're not optimizing for conversion, like we're actually converting not at such a bad rate, almost because maybe people see, oh, they're not optimizing for conversion. Like this isn't so salesy. But, obviously, like, how do we get more traffic? Like that's what I'm thinking about. Like, how do I get more people to be potentially interested in buying? And so that's, I think, what we're really going to focus on. And I think just having people who know what they're doing. Like my background is more like finance, ops, strategy, like what could we do? And so if I can bring in some folks who are like really experienced at like, here's how you can rock e-commerce, here's how you can rock retail, that'll just like really help blow us open.
I'm curious, can you talk about any specific trends or changes in the food and beverage industry that have impacted the way you approach marketing and product development for FFUPS?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I've kind of ignored trends. My view on that is like, I just have this memory of like growing up. It was like my whole family went to my grandma's condo in Florida, and she was doing like the Atkins diet at the time. And of course, like all the food in the house was like Atkins friendly. And we reached a point where like my uncle was like, I'm tired of this. Like, who wants Subway? And so we like all had these like Subway sandwiches on the beach. And that was like kind of like my first memory of like food trends and diet trends. And like, I've always kind of like, yeah, there's like all these brands like Snackwells from like the early 2000s or 90s. Like trends come and go. Like there's keto. I mean, I would say like gluten-free maybe is not a trend because that's like a dietary need. But there's like a lot of these like trends that are like coming and going. And I just kind of want to, if I want to build a brand that's around for 50 years, like I don't want to be subject to something being, oh, this is not the trend anymore. So we can think of it from flavors. And like, I've definitely seen like the cinnamon churro trends happening a lot with flavors across products. And I think that's interesting. And I'm glad we have a SKU for that. But again, like we built our product there around Cinnamon Toast Crunch, which has been around forever. So I think what I think about is like, what's a trend and what's a real, and how do we focus on that? And, you know, right now, like there's kind of like, there's like this diet culture, I think in the US is like incredibly toxic. And so for us, like, we just want to make sure that like, we're actually like a brand that's like, hey, like, we don't like, no, like people should be able to eat whatever they want and within reason. Like, don't eat 5 bags of FFUPS in a day. That's probably not good for you. But like, if you have a bag like once a week or like a couple times a week, like it's not going to kill you because like there's really nothing that bad in it. So like that's kind of how we think about things, and that could be a trend. Like we're hoping that there could be like a wave of, hey, like you don't need 15 grams of protein in your cheese puff. Like let a puff be a puff, and that's like hopefully a trend that we're starting or on the forefront of. But in terms of like other trends, like, you know, like there's some things that are good. Like I think like non-GMO as a thing is probably good. Whether like I haven't done the research, like whether or not it's kind of like one of those just like money grabs by an organization, like I don't know. But I think in general, like, yeah, like higher quality ingredients should be a thing. So it's kind of like, how do you parse out that versus like some sort of ingredient that has a moment and then everyone's like rushing, oh, like we have to do this oil instead of this oil. Like, I don't care about that. Like that's like, you know, not something we're going to spend our time just like spinning our wheels on. But I think there are like important cultural shifts that we do need to be aware of. So there's kind of like that distinction.
It's a really interesting point because I do agree. I do feel like the health wellness industry is almost about to turn upon its head. And it's interesting that you mentioned that you're potentially starting this trend. Where do you see the brand in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think for us, like we have to just keep our heads down and execute and just make sure that as we, you know, take on external capital and really try to grow this thing, now that we've like validated that there's like people that want to eat the thing that we make, I think we just need to get to a point where we're on as many shelves as we can be in the country. We were working on our rollout strategy now of like, well, how do we do that in a way where we're not like spreading ourselves too thin? And, you know, we want to make sure we can drive productivity. But I think like the vision is like, be everywhere people buy snacks. We always joke it's like everywhere besides like Sprouts and Whole Foods, but like, hey, like if they want like I think our ingredients actually hold up to their standards. So like they're listening and they want to take us, like we're not actually against you. It's just kind of a marketing thing. But yeah, like I think just like be anywhere people want to buy us and kind of be the next like iconic snack brand. And I think it's a big vision. Like I think building $1 billion brand is like a crazy thing to say, but when you look at like the Fritos and Cheetos and Lay's and Pringles of the world, like that's who we're trying to be. We're not trying to like build out a niche and then expand our product portfolio across a bunch of different categories. Like we're a Puffs brand and that's kind of all we ever intend to be. And we want to like own the flavored puff category.
I think that's a great place to start wrapping up. Sam, where can our listeners go to learn more about FFUPS?
FFUPS.com, FFUPS.
Perfect. Well, for everyone listening, I will put the link in the show notes, and I encourage you to go and check out the website. It really is something to behold. Sam, I want to thank you again for taking the time to join us today, and all the best in the future with FFUPS.
Cool. Thanks. Appreciate it. It was great to chat through, what we're building and, where we're going.
You've been listening to Beyond the Inbox, an e-commerce podcast brought to you by Drip. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to me if you could subscribe, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcasts. To leave a review, go to ratethispodcast.com/drip and choose your favorite app. That's ratethispodcast.com/drip. Thanks for listening.